Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the end of the Switch 1, going into the Switch 2, and how I feel the Switch 2 is basically the most exciting disappointment that I've seen in a long time. Now that all the pre-orders are finally gone out and it's sold like crazy across the world, we want to talk about some things here that are still a little concerning, that kind of ruined the whole experience for me. First and foremost, a lot of people were complaining about the price. Now, I personally don't think the price of the console is a big deal, because when you compare it to other stuff that's out at the moment, it's really not that pricey. It's about the same, and you're even getting the portability aspect where if you compare that to other portable systems like the Steam Deck and all the other ones, it's really not that far off from the price. In fact, it's even a little cheaper than some of the other ones. But where the price does kind of get to me is the games. Now, yeah, some of them are $69.99, which, fair enough, I can see the games have gone up in price. That's fine. But what I don't like is now that there's some games that are $79.99. That's a bit pricey. And for me, I don't buy the games at the current prices that they're at anyway. I usually wait sometimes years to find a deal either on eBay or PlayAsia or really anywhere where I can either buy them used or just at some crazy discount just because. Now normally I wait until games are down into like the 35 to 45 price range. I feel like that's going to be a lot harder to do now just because you're going instead of from $59.99 or $69.99 down to in the 30s to 40s, you're coming all the way from $79.99. Which, with most systems, that's not a problem. But for this system specifically, yeah, I feel like that's not something Nintendo's ever going to allow to happen. Now, it doesn't mean I don't buy any games at full price. In fact, one of my new favorite games of all time here, Split Fiction, I paid full price, but this one was only $49.99. So, if you're going to maybe flex your prices going up, you definitely need to flex your prices going down. And I did see that on an ad. There are some Switch 2 games that are actually cheaper. In fact, there is one that's going for $39.99, but that leads into problem number 2, and that is game key cards. I like physical media. In fact, I'm a huge fan where I buy most of my indie stuff after it's gone to a limited run or something of that sort. Now, in this generation of Switch, we're getting games where the cartridge is nothing more than just a license key that triggers a download. Now, I know what you're saying, that, that's pretty much the same on Xbox and PlayStation. Well, not always. With the Switch 1, you had about 80% of games that were completely on the cartridge. You needed no updates whatsoever. It would run just as it is, and you had even more that would run with a few glitches. On the PS5, you had somewhere closer into the 70% range, somewhere in there. On the Xbox Series X, you were looking more of I think it's something like 48%. It was pretty low. But now, by design, we're already starting off with games that are pretty much going to be nothing but a key. For me, that kind of just ruins everything because Switch has always been my go-to place for buying physical media. As you can see, just the vast quantity. I have that row, wrong direction, that row, and a third row that's going on in the background there. Pretty much everything has been bought on there. Less so on the PS5, but still quite a bit. And then if you compare that to the Series X, you can see the systems that have all their physical media with the game on the object. I try to gravitate towards that. 3 examples that I thought were really good. Undertale is one of my favorite games. We got Axiom Verge Collection, that's all on the cartridge. And even Animal Well, these are games that would never have gotten a physical release otherwise. Now it makes me question if companies like Limited Run are even going to be able to even keep up, because now the lowest size cartridge that you can get is a 64GB cartridge, which apparently costs a lot. So I'm still hoping for the best, but it's really hard to say what's going to happen going forward. Now, another thing for me that kind of ruined the momentum here is the Switch 2 is kind of just like a refresh. To me, it feels almost like how we went from Xbox One to Xbox Series. Insert a letter here. It's pretty much the same system. It's got pretty much the same UI, the same controls, the same shape, the same game cartridge shape. Really, what's different is it's just more powerful. Yeah, the screen's a little bigger. Okay, the whole thing's a little bigger. That they made the OLED model a little bigger too. The only real feature they added here was a mouse, which I can see that being a very good feature. And the PS5 and the Xbox both support that technically, they just don't talk about it. So I have a feeling we're going to start to see a lot more mentions of that coming from the other 2 companies. But to me, this just doesn't feel like Nintendo. Nintendo's always had some big gimmick, not a small gimmick. You know, when you went from Super Nintendo to N64, now everything was all in 3D. You had an analog stick. It's a big jump. When you went from GameCube to Wii, oh, our new thing is motion. From Wii to Wii U, even though it failed, the new thing was a tablet. It was basically the Switch prototype. This literally is just another Switch. So it's kind of sad, but that's kind of where we are these days. What would be the next big leap? You know, we've done VR, we've done 3D. The only other thing could be is like internal mental gaming where you put a chip on the side of your head and suddenly, you know, in your mind you play a game. That's kind of scary to think about, but hey, it could happen. So all that aside, will I get one? Well, I didn't pre-order it, and I really kind of just want to take a back seat here. I want to see what they do. I don't expect the prices to go down, but I will say the only time I bought a Nintendo console on launch was the 3DS, and the prices went down within 6 months. And yeah, I got the whole Ambassador Program package, which, fine, I got 20 games out of that. Games that, yeah, I do play occasionally. I did actually beat Metroid on that version instead of the NES, mostly just because of ease of access at the time. I don't expect the console to go down in price, but I'm hoping that the game prices will at least stabilize and maybe we won't have so many $80 games. And even at that, most of them are just expanded Switch 1 games, which, yeah, I'm not buying any of those. If you bought one, if you managed to buy one, let me know, and I will see you next time.